Thank you, gentlemen. Y'all teed me up nicely. I understand we have a long weekend, typically a 3-day weekend for everybody, so I'm going to try and drag this out as long as possible. Let's see here. I just want to make sure I got the right ones. All right, cool. So they always say to start these with a joke, and let's get rolling. Hillary and Donald Trump walked into a bar. No, I'm not going there. There was a monastery. It can be wherever, I guess, and it's been there forever. There is all these monks there, and one of the primary jobs is to take the scribes that have been written and just rewrite them. This young monk comes in and he's giving instructions to write the scribes like they've been told to do forever. So he goes in there and he starts writing, but then he questions the older monk and says, well, how do we know that they were right doing the last time? Or the time before, or even 500 years ago? And the elder one looks at him and says, well, this is how we've always done it, so just start writing. So he does. But then he starts thinking, he said, well, maybe he's onto something, so let me go look in the cave where they're all stored, and I will see if it all matches up the way it's supposed to. So he goes down to the bottom of the cave, and he's gone for like 2 hours. The young kid's like, all right, where the hell are you? And all he hears is like tears. This guy's old man's crying. So he runs down the bottom of the cave and, what's going on? And he looks at him and says, you know how he's abstaining from sex all this time? It was supposed to say celebrate. Feel free to use it, just give me a little bit of credit for it. But I feel like that's a lot of the way I look at the industry as a whole. We've been doing things the same way for a long time, and it's worked in a lot of great ways. But maybe there's some things that we can do that will, that was the monk crying. Maybe some things we can change that we can make things a little bit less stressful for some of us. I can tell you I've been there before. And I think on top of that, which Chef Haddad, I'm not sure if he's still here, but was echoing with all the younger generation coming up. It's almost a handing off the baton, and it's a completely different dynamic. You have these really hard situations, and it doesn't have to look like this, where it's an emotional, financial, and physical journey from hell. But again, that's been me. I will tell a little bit of my story here in a little bit, but so on top of that, we also have these millennials, right? They're entitled or narcissistic or lazy, and I'm kind of in like the top end of that spectrum. So I think I kind of got away without having to be too brainwashed by the whole generation. But are they narcissistic? Are they lazy or entitled? And I think it really just comes back to their experiences. And obviously there's some challenges and ways they're having trouble connecting with people because they're used to doing it through Facebook and Snapchat, and if they want to date, they can just swipe right. And we need to, as leaders, as chefs, as instructors, as human beings, really help guide them to the places they need to go. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, but also I want to talk about what that actually entails and how we kind of get there and hopefully make things meaningful for everybody along the way. So I grew up in Atlanta, went to the University of Alabama, got a double major in English and Spanish, and anyone else that's gotten any sort of liberal arts degree like myself knows what a waste of time that was. I got out of school and I had no clue what I wanted to do with myself. So I kind of bounced around, working in different restaurants, really starting when I was 18, and felt like I had to go to grad school to get a good job, you know, that would make my dad happy. He was a financial planner back home in Atlanta. And I went to grad school, got a master's in marketing, did consulting for about a year and a half. And I was like one of these millennials who says, you know what, this sucks, I'm done, I quit. Almost on a whim, after a year and a half, after going to all this school, and moved to Virginia, where I opened up a restaurant with my cousin, helped him turn one of his around as well. And that's kind of when I jumped into restaurants full time about, I don't know, seven or 8 years ago. And along the way, I've had some challenges and struggles myself, which is really a lot of the reason why I wrote the letter that Chef was talking about. I had a challenging night with my girlfriend, and I said, you know what, I gotta sit down and write, which is therapy for me. And I love going into the restaurant with nobody there, sit in the dining room with a little bit of music playing, and I just write. And the sun came up and I wrote this letter that a lot of people really connected with. And at that point I said, you know what, maybe I can help this industry more by sharing my thoughts. A lot of things that aren't really out there as much for the younger generation to kind of connect with. I think I realized that when, after that first day, 2 days, it went viral, it was getting 100,000 views a day, and I put my email address at the bottom, had over 1,000 emails from people saying, like, you helped me change the way I look at my work, my relationship. I had grandparents saying, now I understand why my granddaughter went to culinary school. And so since then, I've really kind of focused a lot on that. I was able to give a TEDx talk, and this last year, I wrote a book called Making the Cut There. I have a few up here that, and Chef, I'll send you a few more that maybe you can pass around. But there's just a few that y'all can kind of bounce around and share. And I'll also send you a link to a downloadable like PDF or something. So if anyone wants to just look at it on a Kindle or something. But I was trying to figure out, you know, what does it take to get to the place that we're all after? Because we don't want it to look like this. And that's been me too. I can tell you, I've broken plenty of convection door ovens from slamming them in the middle of service, which I'm not proud of, but that was back when I was frustrated. The first 3 years my restaurant was open, didn't make a dime. Plus I was working on the side too, just trying to make ends meet. And so I don't think it has to be like this. I don't think it does, and I think it's up to us as the leaders of this school, this community of people, to figure out the ways that we can kind of move forward in the future with a new set of people below us and kind of coming up the ranks. So there's a gentleman named Albert E.N. Gray. Anyone know this story or familiar with him? He was a financial big guy up in New York. In 1941, he gave a speech called The Common Denominator of Success. And he was trying to rally the troops. I envision it being like Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street when he's there in like the boardroom or whatever with everybody. Maybe a little bit toned down from there. But he was trying to rally the troops and get everybody excited and successful, right? So he has this common denominator of success, which is the one thing that separates those that are successful from those that are not. Any guesses?
Hard work. It's not email.
Hard work, I heard. What else there?
It's not email. Education.
Education.
Passion.
Passion.
Drive.
Drive.
Grit.
Grit's a good one too.
Desire.
Desire. I love all those. I think all those can be right. Confidence.
Failure. Oh.
Failure.
Failure.
They're taking all your answers, huh? I think all those could be great answers and could have good cases for them. I think may even wrap all those up as in one, which is the common denominator of success is that the ones that are successful are willing to form the habits that those that are not successful aren't willing to form. which is kind of broad and open-ended, but that also has a lot under its wings. So it's being a chef that's really meticulous and really getting your knife cuts right so that you can have them properly versus just kind of mailing it in sometimes and waking up early to learn and study or going home early to get a good night's sleep so you can get up early and keep things going versus just kind of, I can tell you for myself personally, I spent a lot of my 20s working, going out at night, waking up later than I should have. And I'm sure a lot of the students that are in class every day do a lot of the same things. And I wish, everybody says, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? And I would have said, you know what? You have an opportunity every single day to learn something. And I just missed a lot of those. And finally, when all this kind of clicked for me, I said, you know what can you do with this? So I think it's important really to figure out what these habits are that we can kind of instill in the people around us, the ones that are looking up to us as role models and mentors, so that they can go out into the workforce, not just as good cooks or hopefully chefs in the future, but as people that are contributing to the betterment of society. That's kind of what my mission really is to help people kind of connect with that part of themselves that helps them do great work, and as a result, it's also part of making a great life for themselves. I think the first thing we need to do is create a really compelling vision. I told you guys teed it up for me perfectly. This is Ernest Shackleton, 1921. He was an explorer in the Antarctic, and he needed a crew of men to go with him out to the Antarctic, where it's obviously super cold. You probably couldn't pay me up there now. And for hazardous journeys, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, and it goes on and on and on. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, right? But he found the right people for the job he needed to get done. And in doing so, he was able to complete the mission. While the boat was up there, or the ship was up there, it got stuck in some frozen ice. He had to bail and ended up taking a small ship down to the south of Georgia, not Savannah, the old USSR, I guess. And meanwhile, the crew is there waiting for the ice to melt. The ice melts, they all get off safely. A few weeks later, actually, he dies of a heart attack. But the moral of the story, I think, is the fact that he was able to get a bunch of people on board with what he was trying to do, with what he was doing as putting these signs out there that this is what I believe. If you want in, come on with me. If not, then it's not for you. If you don't know where you're going, and you're able to get you there. I think people try to use this as a motivational quote, and I think they're off. I don't know, this is Alice in Wonderland, I think. And the way I look at it is, you need to have somewhere you're going, otherwise you're not gonna be able to get there at all. You'll end up somewhere where you don't want to be. Which is why, again, it's in class, it's in connecting with their peers, with each other, I think in this room, and in all different capacities of really knowing where it is going to go, and then we can connect in ways that help us to kind of keep that mission moving forward. In my book, I got a chance to interview Brandon Krasowski. He was a CNN hero back in 2015. He grew up in Detroit, and I think he graduated high school in 1998. So he's not too old. He looks a little older than he probably is. He got in a little bit of trouble late in high school, and he was looking at 10 years in prison with a judge. And I guess the judge was cool and gave him probation, gave him a chance to work for a restaurant there in Detroit, found a mentor, and from there he went to Culinary Institute of America, then went on to work at Lucas Cardone, I think, Le Bernardin, Charlie Palmer's restaurants. And along the way, he had this vision of wanting to open up this institute, which is now called Edwin's Institute in Cleveland, Ohio. And he has a place for recently convicted felons who are getting out of jail. They stay 6 months, it's a 6-month program where they go into, they teach them all these different courses, like coursework, but then also they have a full service upscale French restaurant that is run and occupied entirely by these formerly convicted felons. So it gives them a second chance. And it was something that's always close to his heart because that could have been him. And now they graduate a couple hundred folks a year, and he's doing some incredible work. And in talking to him, he was like, I'm never gonna get married because this is too important to me. And he luckily has been married since then and has a kid. But for him, the mission drives the bus, and he doesn't take a whole lot of money home. And people ask him, well, why not? Well, if I can get extra 40 grand to work with Edwin's, I can hire 2 part-time people to do this and do that and keep growing and growing it. So he has this very clear vision that is contagious, obviously with the whole CNN hero last year. And he was willing to stand up, hold his hand up and say, you know what, this is what I believe. The next thing I think is when we're hiring people or when we're preparing our students for being out in the real world, I think a lot of them, and this was me, I wasn't a culinary student, but with my very average academic background, I had no clue what I wanted to do. And I'm sitting there, my dad actually told me, he said, but it'd be really smart to get a nice, well-rounded liberal arts education. This is a financial planning guy. And that didn't work out the way I thought it would, I guess for him either. But I think most of us, when we're 22 or 24 or however old, when we finish school, we don't really know. But I think there's a great opportunity here in culinary school to at least kind of get your feet wet, to figure out, all right, this is the type of stuff I want to do. I was giving a talk in Atlanta beginning of the summer, and this young lady, after talking, raised her hand, a little Q&A session, and she said, Chef, can you get me a job? She had an externship she needed to get taken care of. And I said, well, what are you looking for? What kind of stuff do you want to do? And she had no clue. And I'd love to help people, but I'm not about to ask for a favor for somebody who's very kind of clueless with what they want to do. I think it's probably her fault. I think it's probably her instructor's fault. But I really do think that we need to, when we're hiring, are we hiring? My business partner used to be horrible at this. Oh, we need a line cook. Let's bring this guy in. Well, is he in line? Is he in line with what we're trying to do? Not just cuisine-wise, but does he want to be a part of what we're doing? Does he believe what we're doing? And we have all these. It was impossible to try and find a Chinaman's cap on Getty Images, so that was as close as I could get. But we have all these we have a funnel, we have all this stuff that kind of goes to the top, and ideally, all the good stuff comes to the bottom, which is our employees, our customers, and we put the right signs and signals out there, then it ends up working out really well because we're making more money, our culture is really strong and healthy, and things are going well. But when you're not really hiring for the right reasons, when you're just hiring for a job versus we're hiring because we need somebody that is in sync with what we're doing, then you end up with a complete mess, which is what my restaurant actually dealt with the first couple of years we were in business. So one thing I like to ask, and I think this applies really well to, I can't remember who was speaking earlier, but about what does the other person want out of the interaction? Maybe it's a classroom, maybe it's interviewing him for a job, or maybe it's with colleagues. I think if you're offering somebody a job, you're going to perform a service. I'm going to pay you for it. But it's obviously more than just a transaction. You need to make sure that the job gets done. And at the same time, I think we're obligated to give them the resources and the tools that are going to help move their career forward. So when we're in class, I think it's important to try and connect with students on a deeper level. When I'm in interviews, asking questions, unlike a lot of people that, so where'd you work? How long? What'd you do? That's all great. I mean, that stuff is important. I'm not going to downplay that. But what's a very memorable team experience that you had recently? Or what's your biggest challenge you've had to face in the last 5 years? And how did you deal with that? Asking questions that aren't too intrusive, but peel the layers back a little bit. And in doing this, you're subliminally connecting with that deeper part of them. So then next time they can walk into class, oh, well, Chef so-and-so cares about me. I'm not just a student, it's not just an instructor, but is something just happened? Oh, sorry. It's not just a student, it's not just an instructor, but it's actually a relationship. And I can tell you, for me, I had a really meaningful grad school professor, which is kind of where I got this whole idea. He was like a second dad to me. In grad school, we go play golf every Friday, and we still keep in touch to this day. And I appreciate him as much as he appreciated me. And I think it's important to really just ask ourselves, every day, like, we have an opportunity to give these people that are really needing help. Like, there's the statistics out there that the millennial generation, they're more medicated, they're more depressed, they're more prone to suicide across the board, all these challenges. And it's partly them individually, but it's partly them having parents who give them participation trophies. And, oh, if you want this toy at the toy store, or you want this car on your 16th birthday, here you go. Or, your grades aren't good in high school, let me call your teacher for you. But that doesn't really work once you get in the real world, does it? And it doesn't really work when you're in college. So you have you're out there on your own for the first time, and it's scary. And you get used to connecting again in a different way with technology versus real, like, person-to-person communication. And so I think we need to really try to remind these individuals that there's a greater opportunity, and it's a lot more meaningful to have that type of relationship than to just message somebody on Facebook or shoot them a text message. The next thing I think we need to do is be willing to sacrifice. One of my favorite things to say is, if you want your team to go to battle for you, you need to be willing to take the first bullet. And by sacrificing, what does that mean exactly? I think it can mean a number of things. Give me that water. Thank you, sir. A number of things. I think first of all, it means, are we okay on time? Yeah. A number of things. I think first of all, it means putting other people, whoever that is, in whatever context, in front of your needs, putting those first. That comes around in the end. But it also, I think, means being vulnerable, put yourself out there so they can see you. But then also, I think it's being strong, because you kind of have to lead by example. Thank you, sir. Nice little water assistant.
We call him Bobby Boucher. High quality.
For the book, I interviewed and wrote about Kenny Gilbert. He's a chef down in Jacksonville, Florida. And he was he was 21 years old. He worked at Ritz-Carlton down there. Everyone's familiar with Amelia Island. He was somewhere along the chain there, but he was working a lot, really just eager to learn. He actually owns 2 restaurants now. He's on Top Chef. He's a great guy, and he was 21, recently married. This is November, and he had just gotten to work, got a phone call that his wife got in a wreck on the way to work and died. And you can imagine, pretty bummed out, 21 years old. I don't know how I would handle that. Not only is his wife, but he's also now a single father. So he had to roll with the punches, right? Like we have to do in this industry all the time. Got back into the routine of work, and then Valentine's Day rolls around. And I'm sure it's very challenging, I can only imagine. And he's out of his element. And it's one of those days where you kind of need all hands on deck. You have 2002 tops walking in. And the chef knew he was upset and knew why. And said, listen, Kenny, I get it, man. We either need you to be here, or you need to go home. And whichever one you want to do, it's entirely up to you, man. And then he told him this analogy, I guess you'd call it. He said, every day you walk into work, and there's a monkey on your back. That monkey can be your wife passing away, your bills, the fight you had with your boyfriend or girlfriend, the traffic you had to deal with that made you late and got you written up. But those monkeys will always be there. So when you walk into work tomorrow, see that tree out front? Just hang the monkey right there on the tree. That way you can come into work. This can be your safe place where you can enjoy it. You can not have to stress out about whatever it is. And you can enjoy the people around you doing something you love. And I love that story. I love that analogy because for me, I was very temperamental. I was never a screaming at somebody chef, but I was definitely a screaming and getting mad and when things aren't going my way. And if I'm acting that way, how should I expect my staff to act? And we had an open kitchen, so it wasn't good. So I think you have to lead by example, and that's one of the sacrifices that might not be really apparent, but it's okay, like, you need to be able to set the tone. And if you aren't able to, then your staff's not going to respond the way that you want them to, and you'll never have the culture that you really need. So once you make these sacrifices and you have this vision and you're really generous with who you are, I think you need to invest in the people around you. Not just in those ways, but by wanting to make their career and their life better. Or if we're in school, it's making your students' life better. In asking those questions in interviews, right out of the gates, I know that people know that I'm invested in them, whether I hire them or not. But then if they are hired or they're in the classroom and they feel like I have their back, then they'll do whatever I want, pretty much. Not in a way that I would manipulate them, but they'll go to war for you. And it's really a beautiful place when you get a team environment like that. Like you said, the closest thing I know to the kitchen is you being on a team where you'll do whatever you can to support your guy. And then once you develop this trust with these people around you, which is vitally important, especially in the kitchen, when communication breaks down, all goes to hell. But if you trust the people around you, then amazing things can happen. So when you build this trust, you have this culture of people that really want to be there, that trust each other, that respect each other, value each other. You have an amazing dynamic. One more story about me and my restaurant. In those first couple of years, things were challenging. We were trying to make bills. At the time, nobody knew who I was. I had a little marketing sense, so I tried to apply some of that. but we were struggling, and the sad thing is we were really busy. We just couldn't figure out how to make food costs work quite right, and we were a gourmet kind of sandwich bistro brunch place, so we really focused on the week, Monday through Friday lunch, and the holidays came, and Christmas was on a Tuesday or Wednesday, so obviously New Year's is the next week, something similar, and so we essentially lost 2 full weeks. My business partner and I are there in the office talking, trying to figure out what to do, really. Like, are we gonna have to close? Are we gonna have to pull more money out from our own bank accounts? What are we gonna do? And we thought that we might have to make a cut. Our dishwasher James, which that's not James, but he was a great worker. He was hardworking. He would do anything we asked for him. He was always the last one there. And that's always a job that seems somewhat thankless, that seems to go unnoticed, but obviously a very integral part of any restaurant. So we're there talking, thinking about we might have to cut this guy. One of our waitresses walks behind us, hears the whole conversation. Later on in the afternoon, the whole staff approaches us and says, listen guys, what if we take a cut ourselves and we can keep James around? And to me, that was like this perfect kind of moment where it wasn't just me making sacrifices for the staff, but it was the staff making sacrifices for the staff. With the holidays coming up, getting gifts for your friends and family, and I mean, they could have easily said, you know what? Like a lot of restaurants, they'll say, you know what? Oh, James was cool, but I still won't be able to take care of myself, so he'll have to get a job somewhere else. But they were willing to make a sacrifice because really we made the sacrifices first. I love that quote. I think it's 100% true. I think it applies really, really well to the classroom. So that's Chef Frank Stitt there on the left, and you folks familiar with Frank Stitt? Got inducted to the James Beard Hall of Fame a couple years ago. 1981, I believe it was, he opened up Highlands Bar and Grill in Birmingham. And at the time, this was before the farm to table movement. He was the first one in the Southeast who put any sort of Appalachia on any produce. So it was Calhoun County corn or Shelby County sweet potatoes, and which was pretty forward for any restaurant in the country at that time, especially in Alabama. But he opened that, then a few years later opened up Bottega, Chevy Bonbon, and now he owns 4 restaurants. And I was interviewing for the book, and I asked him, I said, I know you've done some great things, you have some great chefs that have worked under you and for you. One of which is Chris Hastings, who's done some cool stuff down in the Southeast recently. So I said, yeah, I know you've worked with, I know Chef Hastings was kind of under you, you were his mentor. And he's like, oh yeah, but, and before I could even finish pretty much, he's like, but also this guy, and he named probably a dozen different chefs, men, women, all over Birmingham that are now owning their own places, doing their own thing, who had worked under him before. And so now his fingerprints are all over the city. And he went on to talk about how they all have Christmas dinner together. Their wives and husbands come over and they have Christmas dinner. And it's really a family. And they look out for each other. And it's really pretty special. So, I think one of the things I really believe is you can get anything you want in life if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And that's something I've tried to live by, and I think it's really the reason why I've been able to create any sort of success, outside of the kitchen, but still in this kind of realm, because I wasn't asking for anything from anybody, and being generous and putting myself out there and just trying to help people, do that enough times and it comes back around. So I think we all have an opportunity here. The the tide is changing. The new is coming in, and I speak a lot during ACF events, and there's the older crowd, which is like the older crowd, like far older than anyone in this room, and they're a little bit out of touch. And there's a new group coming in, but there's not enough. There's a disconnect between the two, and so I think it's important really for us to just try to bridge that gap however we can. I think it starts on an individual basis by being intentional every single day in the classroom, at work, with each other, and just keeping the conversation going with each other as well to try and make this industry a better place for everybody. So that's all I got. Thank you guys very much.